There we go. Got it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Between Two Teachers. And today's Monday, September 11th, and we are, school has started, and it's a very busy month. And a lot of things are going on that we want to share with you, and nationally, statewide, and locally. So, my name is Consuelo Lara.
My name is Madeline Cronenberg, and this is episode 208 for anybody who's counting, and for those of you who aren't counting. And so we've been doing this for a while. As always, we begin today with our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we have gathered on the ancestral territory of Hui Chin, part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karkin speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. And we remember their continued connection to this land and give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland, and offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and the present. And we encourage you to continue to support the efforts of the Muwekma Ohlone people for justice to be able to become part of the recognized tribal communities in the United States. And you can do that by Googling Justice for Muwekma, and you will learn about their efforts. And also support the efforts and strategies around teaching the curriculum for Ohlone history. And there's my phone is ringing, but it's going to ring anyhow. It's going to ring through. That is a spam message. The Ohlone curriculum is available on the East Bay Regional Park District website, and it's also available on the County Office of Education website.
Yes, on the front page, if you go to About CCCOE, it will bring, and you click on it, and it brings up a land acknowledgement page with a lot of different information on there. So, and they meet regularly, and they add to it and change things, and so it's really, really a good resource for everybody.
It's an excellent resource, and honestly, this is not something that has always happened in California. This is really a recent development when you look at it in the sense of acknowledging, giving a respect and acknowledgement to the tribal communities that have been here forever. So it's an important thing to understand that we're now rethinking and actively changing how our children are taught about this part of our history, and it's a really important thing. So that's why we bring it here to you every week, and we suggest that whatever organizations you belong to do the same thing. That a land acknowledgement belongs right there at the top of every meeting.
You know, I'm going to share about this conference I went to, but they did a land acknowledgement. They had a video, and this video was a local Native American leader, community leader, who gave the acknowledgement, and then they showed pictures of the area, and she was able to name the tribes. It was beautiful. It was very well done. And
that is what we have to do, right? We have to get
awesome.
That has to be the norm in all of our meetings.
That's close to it. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all for being here. I want to suggest that you like us and share our videos out and subscribe to the channel. What I wanted to speak about today a little bit is not so much a national issue. There are a few things that are happening nationally, but I really wanted to focus in a little more on what's happening in San Francisco. And San Francisco, I think I mentioned it somewhat last time, is going through a fiscal crisis and is probably going to have to close schools. Although, you know, during the last meeting where the crisis was introduced, they were certainly said, well, we haven't decided to close schools, and we know you haven't. But what you're doing is describing a set of circumstances that don't really leave many other choices. And if you have any other choices, you should be putting them out on the table now before people do get concerned about your closing schools, because it does look like that's what you're going to do. And I wanted to point out two things that have come up in the last couple of months in San Francisco. And one is that the grand jury, the San Francisco grand jury, did a report. And their report, which they put out in June, was called Not Making the Grade. It's interesting, grand jury reports get titles, but they do. Somebody gives them a title. So this is called Not Making the Grade, San Francisco's Shortage of Credentialed Teachers. So it's a grand jury report on that topic from June 15, 2023. And the points that they made in this report, and we've certainly spoken here about issues around the teacher shortage, but in the ones in San Francisco are very similar to other places. And I just wanted to point out what the grand jury found. The first one is that San Francisco doesn't have an adequate number of credentialed teachers for all of its children. That its recruitment and retention may be negatively affected by their low starting salary. Now, it's low by San Francisco standards. It's low by Peninsula and San Mateo standards, not so low by Contra Costa standards, where it actually is higher than any other starting salary in the county that we're in Contra Costa. So that's another issue. But this was one of those interesting ones. Recruitment and retention may be negatively affected by a lack of awareness of the district's competitive pension and other benefits, which really changes your starting salary, right? And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. San Francisco has lifetime health benefits. Many districts had them at one point. San Francisco still has them. And I can't believe they're going to manage their way through this crisis and continue to have them. I think this is one of these things that's not going to be around very long because it's incredibly expensive. But nonetheless, they have them and people don't know it. So they're not using it to its competitive advantage. And that's one of their issues. And this was literally called out by the grand jury. Recruitment and retention may be negatively affected by the district's failure to correctly administer their payroll. They had a payroll crisis. And yes, people would leave because of that. Well, if I'm going to work and you're not going to pay me, I'm going to be evicted. These are people living payroll to payroll. There is no way that they can just wait 6 weeks for their payroll check. And this was a big crisis that hasn't been solved completely. They have not solved it, right? And it was because they moved to a new payroll system and didn't keep a backup system long enough to be sure that when they migrated to worked. That was someone's decision, and that should never even been a decision. That should just not even be allowed, that you can just suddenly turn one from one to another. But that's what they did. Wow. They also got called out on this lack of data about candidates who decline a job offer and credentialed teachers who leave their district. It impairs their ability to understand and remediate their shortage. And they're not alone in that.
Yeah, that's true. That's so important. Can you imagine having that data? Oh, that's very valuable.
You have to ask, right? You have to do follow-up. It's not like you don't know. I mean, some of these things are unique to San Francisco. The payroll thing is unique to San Francisco. Sure. Everybody else pretty much gets paid. They don't have a broken payroll system. But these other issues are, and also I think the lack of really letting people know their benefits. I think that's a uniquely San Francisco thing. Yeah. But this one, lack of information about data on those who decline and those who leave, that's everybody's problem.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah.
Right? And we could all do better in that, right? And maybe that's something that the counties could lead on, saying, let us help you figure out how people are doing this, right? To understand the reasons that somebody declines a job offer and the reason that they leave a district, right? That shouldn't be that hard to find. And the last one was the San Francisco's administrators' reluctance to cooperate with the grand jury investigators.
Oh. Well, how about that? Oh my goodness.
Got called right out.
Oh,
Got called right out in this. So the other thing that's in this, and anybody can find this report. It's quite easy to read, and it's very and it gives a tremendous amount of information, just in terms of lots of data that affects other people, other districts as well, not just San Francisco. So just for background, and it gives the beginning salaries of all the teachers in all 9 Bay Area counties, the starting salary, so that people can get a sense of it, of where different counties are. So
yeah.
that was that. So this week, or within the last 2 weeks, the San Francisco Teachers Union, to follow up on this, came up with their own report, because they are recognizing that they are about to lose a lot of jobs, and that most likely schools will be closed. So they came out with a report that they call Payday Loans and Pumpkin Patches.
Yeah.
A lot of big titles here. Anyway, and this one is a history of fiscal mismanagement in SFUSD. And their points, their statement was, we reject the notion that staffing shortages are predetermined and unavoidable. It does not have to be like this. San Francisco does not have to pay lower wages than all nearby districts. The district can do better by its students and educators who support them. This report was intended to offer solutions. And so they've offered solutions. So they identified the problems. They identified was some fiscal mismanagement by how they handled some finance decisions, and the financing decisions that the district made cost interest payments and millions of dollars of extra interest payments, because they weren't sophisticated enough to make a more appropriate finance decision. So that's the first one, on the revenue anticipation bonds. The second one has the fact that between 2009 and 10, SFUSD added 124 high-level administrators.
Ugh.
120, I mean, it's an incredible number. I mean, maybe you could do that in New York City, where you have 1 million children, but I mean, 124. These upper management positions have cost the district $26 million annually, which includes the cost of them plus their salaries and benefits. When compared to 12 other similar school districts, they spend more and allocate more to staff and central offices than anybody else. They spend 25% of their general operating budget on central administrative salaries. The average is 18%.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's just criminal.
It is.
Horrible. Oh my
San
God.
Francisco, there's so many ways you can say this, but the final way was San Francisco's spending per student for central administrative functions was $4,182. That just went to that took off the top
Oh
of
my
the money
God.
allocated then, whereas the comparative districts were 2,800. So that's a huge amount of student money that went to those people. So there was that. Then there was a whole thing about property. And we have talked about property here when we were talking about workforce housing. San Francisco is the second largest, SFUSD is the second largest landholder in San Francisco. And over the course of decades, they have foregone millions of dollars by neglecting to use their property holdings to their full extent. Right? There's the possibility when you go through that process that they should be able to be getting $11 to $19 million extra annually from that property, all of which they're getting nothing. And part of that property the title comes from it because some of that property is being used as a pumpkin patch.
Oh my gosh.
Not making a lot of money out of the pumpkin patch. Of course, they had their botched rollout, right? So they have had enormous numbers of problems. And the basic thing is the teachers union that is coming up here with solutions. And the solutions are that they have to be more creative rather than watching classrooms sit unfilled as quality educators leave for higher paying districts. They should use every possible strategy and tool at their disposal to save money and offer competitive wages.
Yep.
They can do that.
They could, they've got the money to do that. Just get rid of half of those administrators so you could give some really competitive wages. I mean, that's just insanity. And if in the Bay Area you own big parcels of land and you're not using it, it's throwing money away. They could be using this and spend that money on direct services for kids, teach them to read, give competitive wages. I mean, it's all right there. You could do it. Just got to decide to do the smart thing.
Right.
But
And this is the whole thing. I mean, they were obvious, they made some really major mistakes. Things they made mistakes around this whole payroll thing, which is just filled with bad decisions, right? I mean, it's one thing that the thing doesn't work. That's a mistake, and it's hard to. I wouldn't even begin to offer blame. The blame is, why didn't you have a backup system?
yes,
That was the decision.
yeah,
Someone's to blame for that decision. That needed to be there, right? So that's the kind of decisions. And then these other decisions that they made around financing, those are decisions that really you need to be comparing yourselves to other districts and not waiting for the grand jury to write a comparison for you later on.
thank goodness for the grand jury. That
Right.
is eye-opening. Oh my gosh.
So you need to be a little self-reflective, and that's really, I think, what didn't happen. They were not self-reflective, and they needed to be better in guarding these dollars. So I don't know what will happen at this point. Now they're going to have to go ahead. They're going to have to sell their property. San Francisco property values is not the greatest time to do it because of all of the post-COVID issues in San Francisco, but they're going to have to figure something out. But I just wanted to call out the fact that this is happening in San Francisco. We'll continue to keep everybody updated on it, and there's a lot that we can learn from.
Yes, yes. Hopefully they learn from their mistakes, but we can learn from their mistakes as well, big time.
There are things in there that are not unique to them. They are not unique to them. So we just need to, and the other part is, one part is the part about really branding yourself. They should be shouting from the rooftop that they offer lifetime benefits, right? That should not be a secret that people don't know, because it's not a secret to the people who are looking at the budget. They know it. It's an expensive thing. So as long as you're going to offer it, you should let people know that you've got it.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much they could be doing, having higher wages, and even providing with all that land, some education, workforce housing.
And they are doing that. I give
That
them
they
credit
are
on that. They're good with that. They're good with that.
investing in their land, yeah, and putting it in the right place, not on administrators.
That's the big thing. They it's great to have administrators if you can afford them. They couldn't afford 124 extra administrators. That's just not, who paid for that? Their children paid for that, and they couldn't afford that.
No.
So that's the San Francisco story. But you have the story, the county story now.
Yes, Contra Costa County. I went to the Contra Costa County Board of Education offices. County boards have an annual conference, and it was in Monterey, and it was very good. It was 3 days, and there was some really good workshops there I want to share about. A couple things on the collaborative leadership, because there's a new trustee handbook, so that was continuing discussion. A lot of things on what's the latest money situation happening in Sacramento, of course, policy and politics. And there was an acknowledgement of how there are people who are spending a lot of money to get on these boards, and then really changing the culture, or trying to change the culture of public education, when it comes to ethnic studies, banning books, or the LGBTQ students. I mean, it's not a good direction for public education. So one of the, I guess, things that they're trying to put forward is, because of this, we need to collaborate more. We need to collaborate, and that's true, and that is very, very true. So there were a lot of great things. Something we've talked about last year, they had a nice presentation on safe schools and collaborate. And this was initiated by superintendents of San Mateo and Monterey on collaboration, commitment for safe schools. That's really, it was really very well done. They discussed the solving the teacher shortage, and they talked about Reach University, which I believe has been around for quite a while. And I think it is a good program. And but it kind of focuses mostly on your classified individuals, which I think, sure, there's some people there, but for the most part, I don't think that's where you're going to really get a large number of people who want to come into teaching. So, and you don't want to convince people to be teachers. You want teachers who are, that's their calling, and you help
Really
them
want to grow them. That's your strongest.
grow them. Yes, absolutely. And there was a really great workshop on expulsion hearings. And one of the things that bothered me in our, because we're an appellate group, the county office. Kid's going to get expelled. One thing a parent can do is, in addition to getting a lawyer, can come to the county and say, I want to appeal this. And so we need to know our job. We need to know what how we're supposed to do this. And we don't get into the parent and the students business, really. We are looking at the process that the district went through, and if they did what they were supposed to be doing, so if they did right by the parent and the child, really. So that's our role. That's what we need to be looking at. And there was a checklist, so I'll be sharing that. And that was very, very good. I hope parents know that there is there is a process that this is supposed, and that your child does not have to be given the third degree at these. That's not what this is about. What else did we have? Oh, we had of course more information about the charter schools and reform legislation. That's best practices. It's kind of, everybody says the charter scene is kind of quiet these days. That's true. And that is true, but it's still there. Again, the trustee handbook. I enjoyed this workshop on core values and how it can address the achievement gap. And students, I mean, you could have two students, they gave an example, who, come from same background, same everything, but they have totally different values in terms of what they want to do in the future. And so when the kid gets in touch with what their values are, and then it just is like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's who I am. And then it kind of like just kind of makes it more clear, your direction, and so it was very enlightening for me. And I want to do it with our board. And I'm hoping our board and our superintendent that we could do this values. I think I remember when I taught elementary school a million years ago, we called it values clarification. Remember
Right.
that curriculum?
Mhm.
Yeah, there was
Mhm.
a whole curriculum on it. So I want to get back to our values. And that kind of addresses the whole issue, like I said, that people who are trying to change the culture of public education. Well, where's the conflict in values there?
Well, they have different values. Honestly,
It's different
that's really.
values. So
I think that a lot of those folks are they're true to their values. They just have a different set of values.
that's
Nobody
it.
can say they're not being hypocritical, because they're telling you up front what they're going to do, and then they go and do it.
Yes, yes, that the parent rights are more important than the student rights. That this is about, you can't tell me. So yeah, identifying those values. I think that's really helpful. And you can talk more intelligently when you know where people are coming from in that sense. So
Right. And if you have values, I mean, one of the values that everybody talks about is equity, but
yes,
you don't see equity played out in action,
that's
right? And what happens is people don't really get called on it.
yep.
And they can be, but there has to be a structure to do it, right?
Yes.
It just like, the structure we seem to have is the grand jury report, but the grand jury is not going to show up for a long time.
That's
You should
kind of
be-
extreme.
Yeah, you should be able to do something before the grand jury shows up and writes a 90-page report on what you didn't do.
Yes, exactly. So let's get on the right, path. We don't have to have a grand jury report. There was a great workshop on the community schools and how the county, we've had community schools in West County for how long? I mean, I
Yeah.
went to Helms Middle School in 1998, and it was a community school, and that's why I never left there. And so
Right.
known about community schools. So now the counties are learning how they can help the different districts with their community schools and meet the challenge. So, and then the last workshop was really great. It's about something you mentioned about branding. How do we brand our districts and ourselves as educators? And it was a public relations firm. And how do we build trust? How do we really interact and engage the public in a two-way conversation, not just one way, and not, you know, alienating them? So that's a game changer. It really is. If we start doing these things in a more positive way with the public, where we're engaging them and we're listening. That's the one thing they said. No, they couldn't solve my problem, but they listened to me.
Right.
That's that's what a parent wants to know. A student wants to. Everybody wants to be heard, and we listen to you. So a lot of these things are, I brought back, and I'm, want to follow through with our board, and I'll be sharing those at our next board meeting, which is this Wednesday. Which big shout out to our two new student board members who will be introduced Wednesday, Sophia Nguyen and Daphne Milinich. And one's from El Cerrito and then Danville, and we're all just so happy about it. If anybody wants to come down and meet them before the board meeting, 4:30, we're gonna have cookies and interact with them. And so
It's going to be very exciting to see how they contribute, and I do hope that they reach out to the other student board members who are on district boards around the county.
as a matter of fact, I have to give a shout out to Lynn for this great idea. Lynn Mackey, our superintendent,
Mhm.
she had the idea of how about if we have a council and we invite the district student board trustees to come and all meet at the county. Pretty much
I love that. That's
like
a
all the
great idea.
yeah, like all the curriculum councils
Yeah.
do and all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so and they could be as an advisory, and we could grow these leaders for
Right.
tomorrow.
And they can do it on Zoom. This is the other part.
Oh yeah, these kids are savvy.
They can
tell
easily
you.
do that. And anyway, that's a great idea to start to do that. And then I think Contra Costa can really make some headway in terms of the students understanding what's going on in other parts of the county, as well as what each of their boards are doing, which is something
Yes,
different again, right?
absolutely.
So that's a big shout out to all of them and their success. And I want to do a final shout out to one of our viewers sent me a note and said that she really was felt this would be an important thing for us to announce, and she's completely right. September is Suicide Prevention Month, right? And suicide prevention is a huge issue for school districts and for our communities in general. And she's suggested, and I'm going to link to this, there's a California Suicide and Self-Harm Trends webinar that's going to be held on September 19th. And it's this is our friend Renee is the person who sent this to us. And it's an excellent thing for anybody to register for. And if, like all these other webinars, if you're not able to watch it, I'm sure it's going to be available later on the California Department of Public Health website. So I'm going to link to this, put the link out here. It's the it's called the California Suicide and Self-Harm Trends webinar, and it's being I really do suggest that you join me in watching it. I'm going to be watching it. I'll report out on it after I watch it, but everybody is welcome to watch it and learn from it, because these trends are an important part of what's happening in our very stressful society today.
Yes, yes. And I'm happy to say that we have a Suicide Prevention Month resolution on our agenda for Wednesday. So it's very important, very
It's
important.
very important. And I think like everything else, there are action steps. And I'm hopeful that this webinar will bring forward some really specific action steps that we can watch in our professional lives with the students that we serve, but also in our personal lives, right? To know that it's a serious thing. It's not, you don't want to be dismissive of it. And the fact that we've reached the point now where it exists to this level just shows that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up, bringing that forward.
so that's it for this week. We'll be back next time, and we'll see you then. And our next one will be episode 209.
Yes, we're getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting up to 250. That's our next one. We'll celebrate. We get to 250.
Yeah.
Anyway, goodbye from Between Two Teachers.
Bye-bye, everybody.